mic over to Lisa. And thanks again, and I'll see you as a participant, as an attendee. Actually, I'll switch down to attendee mode. Okay.
Well, thank you, George. You did such a great job this morning and this afternoon. It's going to be hard to follow you, but I will try my best. Next up, I would like to welcome Katharina Beberweil. She is the manager for the Library and Information Center, IBFD, in Amsterdam. And her other professional roles included head of public library for the city of Aachen in Germany, and director of information resources at Jacobs University in Bremen. And she also worked as a senior subject librarian for economics, university library for the Free University of Bolzano in Italy. I'd like everybody to welcome Katharina Beberweil in her talk, David versus Goliath, Tax Law in the Jungle of Bibliometrics, a case study report from the Library and Information Center, IBFD. Take it away, Katharina.
Sorry, Katharina, you're muted, actually.
So, thank you, Lisa. I hope you can hear me now.
All good.
Perfect. So, good evening from Europe, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak at BRIC 2021. Of course, you've all read the title of my presentation, The Fight Between the Small David and the Big Goliath. It is actually the story of us and some of IBFD's publications, and I'm convinced that many of you will echo what I'm going to tell. Before I dive into the paths that we have and are still taking to get our journals added to the various rankings and indexes, I would like to briefly speak about tax law and our very own institution, IBFD. Just a question. I cannot continue to go on the presentation.
How did you share it?
Yes, I have shared.
Sorry, but did you share it as a PowerPoint, a PDF, a file?
PowerPoint. It's a Microsoft PowerPoint.
Okay. Try using either click or the arrows.
Yes, I'm doing that. Nothing happens.
Okay, if you move your cursor to the left side of your screen, you might see little arrows that click down or up. There you go. It's turning up.
Okay. All right. Okay. So this is the agenda. So I'm going to take you a little bit through the history of tax and life because those topics are intrinsically tied. I will, of course, also explain who we are, what we do, and in the end, of course, I will come to the essence of this talk, to two of our publications and how we try to get tax knowledge listed. Okay. Taxes and taxation are universal in their existence and application, and resources describing them and their effects on humanities do exist since ages. Check out what famous people have been thinking about that. So I think everyone knows this phrase, everything, is there except death and taxes. Even if you die, you still have to pay taxes. So that is how tax is intrinsically tying life to it. So here are the famous people behind those expressions: Benjamin Franklin, Daniel Defoe, Christopher Bullock. Furthermore, there are some stories that you should know how tax is actually influencing our daily life. So this information here I owe to my colleague Louis Noel, who is a tax lawyer by his origin, and who has showing the history of tax to us. So on the left, you see the earliest known tax record, which is from 6,000 years before Christ. And it's coincidentally the oldest library record is located in Mesopotamia from 2600 before Christ. Then on the right, you see a slide about the stinky business. And as some of you might know, in Rome, they had a urine tax. If we go on, Well, our library is located in the Netherlands. And of course, in the Netherlands, we used to have the curtain tax, while the English people had the window tax. That's also a reason why a number of buildings are actually quite small, because the windows or the curtains are then small enough so you didn't have to pay that much of taxes. And last but not least, here is the picture of how that was also represented on the other side of the world, so on the America side. Okay, assuring that all tax publications on cross-border taxation were collected at one place and that they were made accessible to the interested public marked the beginning of us, the library, of what has become IBFD, the International Bureau of Fiscal Documentation. Located in Amsterdam, with some additional offices all over the world, IBFD's mission is to disseminate the knowledge and understanding of tax globally. Us having been the start of the organization, we are at the heart of the organization, but actually we are much more. So this is actually our headquarters in Amsterdam, looking as it should look now. Of course, we are all in home office, so it's a very isolated building right now. If we stay one moment further at IBFD, let me explain what we are. We are an independent foundation according to Dutch law, and it is our mission to promote and disseminate the understanding of cross-border taxation. We do this by working with a net of in-house research specialists from more than 40 countries, and we are also supported through a global net of local correspondents all over the world. We call ourselves an information broker that is speedy, precise, accurate, and relevant for the community for international tax law. We are unique in our hybridism. We are non-for-profit and we do follow commercial activities. In the portfolio that we offer, we do have information and research, including academic teaching, publications, consultancy services, and training in the area of international taxation. As a special library with a collection focused on international and domestic taxation, we combine the function of public and law library under one roof. You see here how we were started. In 1938, we started as a very small documentation center with just 4 researchers, and we have now grown into quite a big library with more than 10 FTEs offering the whole bouquet of library services. I've also included the facts and figures from January 2021 with some pictures of our library, of course. As the library, we provide access to tax law materials from all over the world. We are publicly accessible, offering many functions and services a normal public library also offers. And we are called to be an excellent one-stop shop for tax topics, covering materials in 70 languages from more than 270 countries. And of course, we are strong in preserving our collection, including digitization, and in sharing our experience. Our oldest print material dates back to 1811, to the times of Napoleon. It's the bilingual publication in French and Dutch on tax law. I have also included 2 slides from our digital presence, including the URL where you can find us, so please feel free to reach out to us. Coming back to tax and bibliometrics now. As I said, the community interested in international taxation and related subject areas is small, while the number of topics to discuss is ever growing. Here are just a few examples of current and hot topics: FATCA, digital tax, multilateral instrument, global minimum tax. Like elsewhere in the academic sphere, the challenges of bibliometrics and indexation also apply to this very specific area of the law discipline. In this respect, our role in our home institution is to be in midstream, as I represented here with the image of the balance. When it comes to the discussion about bibliometrics, we act as a broker between our departments dedicated to academia and publishing, amongst others, thereby showing sympathy for both parties' points of view on this important topic. Let me start with the frustrations and the various perceptions of stakeholders and decision makers we encountered when spearheading the addition of some of our own publications to various rankings and indexes. As many of you will know as well, a library is always in the middle, as we normally are able to understand the perspectives of all stakeholders present in an organization. I illustrated to you how IBFD is set up and what it is involved in, and thus you will immediately understand that some clashes for sure take place when the perspectives of IBFD as a publishing house, here on the left, meet those of academics, here on the right. The differences couldn't be bigger. On the one side, the clear focus on revenue generation and market growth. On the other, freedom of thought, intellectual creativity, and in-depth analysis of issues. And we as a library are in between, understanding both the profit orientation as well as the impetus of diving into research questions. Getting indexed or ranked does not necessarily come with extra money being raised, at least not for the publishing house. It does come with a win in visibility, reputation, and citability, but that's not really a currency profit people look at. Likewise, for the academic community, they want to follow up on a critical issue, a challenging question, or on envisioning the next big tax revolution. How to sell that work, how to get it funded. That's not always the business of researchers. As you can see, there is no easy way out of this dilemma. In order to get something done, we as the library decided to apply the guerrilla tactics. Go, try and see. In other words, you could also say it's easier to ask for forgiveness than for permission. But to be honest, so far, we've never had to ask for forgiveness. Any action we took was actually accepted benevolently. If we hadn't decided to do something, nothing would have happened. So in the end, there was and is benefit for everyone. Our efforts in being ranked on indexes, rankings, metrics, and alike have focused on 2 out of our 8 journals or journal-like publications. Those 2 are the Bulletin for International Taxation, here on the right. Sorry, I have switched the text and the pictures. I'm sorry for that. So the green one is the Bulletin and the gray one is the World Tax Journal. The Bulletin for International Taxation is a very old and redeemed publication in tax law. Its first issue was published in 1946, while the World Tax Journal is still a very young journal that was started in 2009 and comes with a double-blind peer review. Not surprisingly, the Bulletin has seen a lot in its 75 years of existence. We scatter our activities in between the multitude of commercial, national, and subject-related indexes. Next to Scopus, Web of Science, EconLit, we are looking at the lists of ANVOR, Italy, ABDC, Australia, FMS Journal Ranking China, the VHB ranking in Germany, Dialnet in Spain, and many more. Our bulletin, for example, had been listed on EconLit for more than 30 years until its title underwent a very slight change, and since then it has not been included there anymore. Nowadays, we are also not succeeding in getting it back on EconLit, as obviously this index has also changed its inclusion criteria over the last decades. This case is a good example for why we feel like David against Goliath, why we feel torn apart in the world of bibliometrics. The rankings, lists, and indexes are so confusing between the different disciplines. Science, of course, is on a different planet, as viewed from the perspective of law. Law has a very different publication tradition than science. No doubt, there is still a huge trend to publish on paper and to stick to paper-derived rules. Tax law, as such, is a discipline that is neither nor. It's neither pure law nor pure economics. This hermaphroditic status makes it very difficult to be recognized and accepted on relevant metrics, especially since those tighten their criteria. International text typically sits in between disciplines, so it is overwhelming to get it right, as our authors are typically drawn from both law and economics, from accounting to economics, commerce. But also philosophy, politics, and international relations are subject areas that increasingly clash or overlap with tax. And last but not least, IT is coming up as a relevant field of action for international tax law as well. Needless to say, we are all looking forward to what technology will do in that respect. Do we think all bibliometric measurements are ready for this diversity, for this increasing trends and interdisciplinarity of subject areas, not necessarily just limited to tax law? Well, my answer is no. Being compliant with formal frameworks and rules seems to be more important than the content discussed. Publishing in English is a must, but what about all the world-class publications that are and have never been meant to go English? What about the diversity and creativity that used to distinguish publications, that used to serve as stimulus for further and thought-provoking research? It's quite impossible to see this represented in the big indexes, frameworks, and formularities one has to be listed on to be relevant. I'm not yet done. I also miss a minimum level of consideration for and appreciation of the unique publication culture pertaining to specific areas of research. Research and tenure staff are forced to publish in the well-represented journals, etc., as a good position and quotient on rankings and indexes is both necessary for their careers as well as for the financing of research activities. Even if a certain medium in your research area might be the top one to write for in your discipline, if it does not make it to the well-known big lists, well, then you better don't publish there until you have secured your tenure, until you have gotten the points you need, until you have secured the money you need. I am worried that very soon the fascinating world of bibliometrics will have turned into a soulless pabulum, as equalization has won. Still, we won't give up in our efforts, simply because we, like many of you, can't. The WTJ, so the World Tax Journal, got accepted to Scopus in August 2019. The Bulletin got accepted in April 2020. For the Web of Science, both journal submissions are still pending. The whys would be another story to tell. And for a number of other law-relevant metrics, we have been successful in either securing the top status or to get ourselves uplifted in the latest editions. I would like to end this presentation as I started it, showing you once more how much tax and life are linked. We are part of a tax law library network, so we help each other by creating awareness and learning from each other. And tax, of course. Do we really like to pay taxes? Well, you know, we see what some other people have said. Before I come to the end, I would encourage everyone again, if you want to reach out to us, please do so. Needless to say that COVID-19 has disrupted the life of all of us. Otherwise, we would have met in Waterloo today. But of course, it has also shown again how strong we are as a global network. Knowing each other, knowing where to find each other, knowing how to help each other, that is and will never be more important than today. Hartelijke groeten vanuit Amsterdam and Europe. Thank you.
Dankjewel.
Graag gedaan.
I know maybe 4 words in Dutch, and thank you was one of the phrases, along with smakelijk eten and at dinner time. Anyways, thank you so much for a very engaging talk. I agree with many of the comments about taxes, is that we hate them so much, but we can't live without them in many respects. So I have receiving a few questions here. One question is, as a tax bibliometrician or at the tax library, what are some of the typical requests you receive for bibliometric data in addition to what you have already shared?
Well, the situation is as such that tax professionals, tax researchers have only recently started to understand the importance of bibliometrics. So what I try to say is that the academic people, of course, have started to realize, oh my goodness, even we from law now have to start understanding all the lists, indexes, SSRN, being cited, cite, etc. While, for example, on our side, the commercial partners, yeah, they take it as it comes, but it's not having the importance that it should have also for us as a publishing house. So in that respect, we do not receive so much. We have a few people that are really eager, so that try to push it. But for the rest, it's still, you know, a little bit sleeping away, and we'll see when the big wave will come. So we, as the library, we try to, you know, break ground for it, to really get it further, and to also find even more stakeholders that are supportive. And of course, looking around what's going on in other disciplines. What are our competitors in tax law doing? What can we copy? What do we have to copy to stay on top of the developments?
Excellent. Oh, I think I can squeeze in one more quick one. Well, actually, as you are calling in from the Netherlands, we are so pleased that you were interested in speaking at this year's BRIC conference. Just wondering, how did you become interested in, or how did you come to know about BRIC, and how did you decide to become involved?
I maybe I have to explain that I personally have always been very interested in international networking. So from my very first career days onwards. So I have always looked around, and when I moved to tax law, which has been 6.5 years ago, of course I didn't know what to expect. But I could apply everything that I've seen in the other libraries before. And in one of the conferences, or in various conferences, I of course also spoke with people from Canada. And I asked, okay, do you have a big conference, or do you have gatherings of specialized libraries for law or tax law? And then I somehow got some information on certain, I think it's the CARL, C-A-R-L. And in that respect, I then, you know, through our friends from Google, I ended up knowing about BRIC. And of course, when we had to postpone last year's conference, I stayed tuned. And I'm happy to be here this year. And of course, looking forward to staying tuned for the years to come.
Well, we will welcome you with open arms. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And so we are completing Katharina's section exactly on time, which is wonderful. And I would like to introduce our next speaker.